It is 1987. As a young man, only 12 years old, this was a very important time in my life. We had just moved to Central Florida, me and my two younger brothers, with my mom and her newly acquired boyfriend. At this period of time, I was in 6th grade, going on to 7th. Thought I was going to junior high school, but in 1987, they just made the switch to middle school. It was a new school. It was a new time in my life. My mom had said we were going to go visit my grandmother. She hugged me goodbye, and that visit lasted over 14 years. My grandmother and grandfather did not have much money, and they were raising 3 boys. Needless to say, I was tall, skinny, scraggly, and basically wore the same clothes almost every day of my life, going into a brand new school. And there was plenty of things that would distract me from the trials and tribulations of being 13. Well, actually 12. And being a preteen. Struggling socially with the other kids in school. Michael Jackson was bad. Arnie was hunting down an alien that would hunt for sport. Ronald Reagan was president of the United States. Gas was like 85 cents a gallon, but what did I care? I couldn't drive. You could return soda bottles, glass soda bottles, for a nickel still in 1987. There was a spring not too far from where we lived that every day of the summer we would walk down to. It was free of charge. Kelly Park, also known as Rock Springs in Apopka, Florida. Spent a lot of time in my childhood watching Dan Marino going outside and playing on a clay dirt road, throwing a football in the air and catching it to myself. We didn't have internet. The closest thing we had was a phone on the wall with a rotary button. And if you wanted to call a girl, you had to dial all 7 numbers. Even if you were brave enough to speak to that girl in the first place. Newspapers was still a form of media. And every single week, every single Sunday of my life, I would look at the sports, the funnies, and the movies that were coming out. And wouldn't you know, a movie was coming out that was just 2 to 3 years removed from my childhood. A movie that I couldn't believe was coming out because I didn't pay attention to trailers at 12 years old. I don't know anybody who did. But I saw this big statuette of a man. And underneath it, it said, Masters of the Universe. In the early 1980s, Kenner had hit a gold mine, capitalizing on the tremendous success that was known as Star Wars. Kenner was just basically printing money hand over fist with their Star Wars action figures and proving that there was a market for action figures. But they weren't the only dog in the fight. Hasbro also had a line of toys that was a huge success because they had articulation. They were G.I. Joe. Now, at this point in time, most young boys were either playing in a galaxy far, far away, a long, long time ago, or they were a real American hero. But little did they know that there was a third company, and knowing is half the battle. Mattel had been extremely successful with their line of female figurines known as Barbie. Mattel wanted to get into the boys market. It was the 80s. Boys didn't play with girl toys. At least that was the sentiment back then. Mattel looked at what Kenner had, and they also saw what Hasbro had. And they were like, well, how can we set ourselves apart from the G.I. Joe and the Star Wars toys? How about muscles? So the heads of Mattel, they brainstormed concept art and everything like that, and eventually they landed on a sword and sorcery character. I believe the original name was Turk or something like along those lines. There is a great documentary on Netflix called The Toys That Made Us that will tell you the full story. Now, I was thinking about watching it and taking notes and actually being more informative, but essentially this is a movie review of the 1987's Masters of the Universe. So I'm just giving you a short summary and a rundown of some of the things that happened without having to, research the names and the key players and stuff like that. Needless to say, they came up with the plastic doll that could bend at the waist, move the head, move the shoulders and the legs. And He-Man was born. Now, the original toy line came with a comic book, and I believe DC Comics were actually in charge of publishing these comic books, and they were only about so big, and they were packed in with the toys. And from what I understand, the comic books were actually pretty dark in tone and very grim. And so they were becoming successful, but G.I. Joe had a cartoon. Star Wars had a movie. And you know what they did in the 80s for toys? They made 30-minute long advertisements, and they were called cartoons. So now Filmation comes into the picture. And Filmation put out this series, Masters of the Universe. And they were in syndication, and I believe 61 episodes, and I believe it ran 2 to 3 seasons long. And they were just short little adventures, and actually they're kind of a hard watch to watch now because they're kind of goofy. But, when you're 12 years old, that was good times. And it followed the adventures of He-Man and Eternia with his commander-in-arms, man-at-arms, Tila, and the sorceress, Orko, and of course, his alter ego, Prince Adam. And then we had villains like Skeletor, Beastman, Trapjaw, and they would get in their weekly mishaps. Skeletor always hatching a plan. I'll get you, He-Man, to take over Eternia. And of course, He-Man always figuring out a way to foil. At the end of each episode was a little PSA, just like they did with G.I. Joe, just like they did with, I believe, Transformers. Needless to say, the cartoon was an immediate success. Toy sales were blowing up all over the place. Hollywood was paying attention. And then here comes Canon. Canon Pictures is infamous for buying huge IPs that are very remarkable, but slashing budget costs, not paying for production, and putting in low effort. Canon Pictures is pretty much known to be responsible for the fall of the Superman franchise with Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Canon's biggest name star at the time, believe it or not, was Chuck Norris. May he rest in peace. But Chuck Norris could not even survive the travesty that was Canon Pictures. Some of Canon's most known films is Life Force, the Missing in Action series, Delta Force, The Apple, Electric Boogaloo 1 and 2, and of course the movie that we are talking about today, Masters of the Universe. Masters of the Universe came out in August of 1987. You got Dolph Lundgren, Frank Langella, Meg Foster, Kelsey Fields. The movie, I really enjoyed this as a child. I can't say that enough. I didn't get to see it in theaters, which was disappointing. But I did end up catching it years later on VHS. Movie became part of my childhood, became part of my regular watching and viewing habits. You know, watched it over and over and over and over again. It was always like waiting for part 2. Obviously, I didn't know much about, you know, budgets and plots and stuff like that. Just watch a movie and you enjoy it. The set designs in this movie, you know, a lot of it takes place on Earth in the streets, so there's not really a lot of set designs. You got the cheesy 80s special effects. There's a lot of matte paintings being used. They obviously cut a lot of corners, took a lot of money away from this film to try to support Superman: The Quest for Peace, because they were like, which came out in the same year, and so I guess their thinking was like, you know, well, we got this, but Superman is a known thing, so we're going to try to give money over to Superman, and then they kind of shot themselves in the foot with this movie. the set design for Inside Snake Mountain, where the final confrontation takes place between He-Man and Skeletor, is actually very, very well done. Very well done. The fight choreograph in this seems a little bit clumsy. I don't know if that's on Dolph or if that's on stuntman for Frank or what's going on there. It just seems kind of stiff, kind of clumsy. Dolph obviously is a trained martial artist and showed a lot better in a lot of his later movies. Dolph's line delivery it's Dolph Lundgren. It's Ivan Drago. You know, no disrespect. It's just, you know, you're not going to get Shakespeare out of Dolph. You know, but I enjoyed his movies throughout his career, so I don't have a problem with him as an actor. You know, the bottom line is this movie was just important to me. It was, you know, I was going through a lot in the late 80s and early 90s, and, you know, He-Man as a whole, the cartoon, the toys, the movie, it all helped me escape reality and stuff like that, and it was a big deal to me, and I've always been a sucker for sci-fi epics anyways, you know, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, epic fantasy adventures, Conan the Barbarians. I've always gravitated towards those kind of movies to begin with, so definitely felt like I had the power. You know, that's exactly what those toys and that line was aiming for. And it was funny, we would buy the toys, you know, the Mattel toys, the figures and stuff like that, and we would even buy the offshoot brand. I think they're done by Remco, and it was like Warlord, Hercules, stuff like that, which had the same figure design, and we would have like the WWF, at that time WWF wrestling ring, and we would have, you know, clanking our toys together during wrestling shows. We would have, you know, Mosquito versus He-Man, or Hercules versus Skeletor, or, yeah, that's what we did growing up as kids. Yeah. And but yeah, 39 years later, this Friday, I'm going to be in the movie theater, 12 years old again, and waiting to hear those words, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power. And everything I hear about it so far is good, so I truly hope it doesn't disappoint, but it's got to be better than the 87 movie, and I enjoyed the 87 movie, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy this one. So that has been this very long video, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and see you next time. This has been Finn and I. Please like and subscribe for more content, and catch you on the flip side.